It is Sunday, October 10th, and last night we had a big day in combat sports history. Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, the trilogy, did not disappoint, and just hours before that, we had Mackenzie Dern ranked number 4 versus Marina Rodriguez, a classic grappler versus striker. Nick, when you were headed into that fight, what were your expectations going in?
My expectations were, I think, what most people expected, which is that Mackenzie would just manage to either pull guard or take Marina down and, work her magic on the ground and submit her. I even expected like rounds 1 and 2. Round 2, I think she got her down, right? And, but that was about it.
Yeah, I was definitely team Dern going in, and I'll always be a fan of her awesome Instagram page that features her little daughter. And you'll remember that one of her only losses, or her only loss other than Marina now, was when she came back kind of early against Amanda Serrano. So when I was watching her fight, I was just hoping she'd be able to get it to the ground. But as you mentioned in our pre-show, Morning Combat had a nice tidbit that Mackenzie Dern's takedown defense is 0 because she welcomes the jiu-jitsu and ground game into her competition, but her takedown attempts is only 10%. So obviously she's been working with Jason Pirillo, working on that striking, and I think being able to get those flurries and being able to overwhelm her opponent on the feet will help lead to get the takedown. But we were still missing that level change and the transition into the wrestling. So how do you think that she'll be able to, I don't know, maybe get a new coach that's specifically for wrestling, so she'll be able to apply that jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, so there's 3 elements that she needs, and like the jiu-jitsu, she's already levels above. Like jiu-jitsu, she's one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners, maybe the best out of the entire UFC roster. I think her level is that good. The thing is getting it there. Like at this point, even pulling guard and welcoming the takedowns, I think people have sort of understood that that's what she does, and they're not gonna be. They're gonna hesitate. They're not gonna necessarily take her down if she pulls guard. They're not gonna go in. They're gonna just let her stand up because that's where they're gonna beat her. Apparently, now with Jason Pirillo, right? Her striking has looked a lot better. I think against Verna last time, who was also a jiu-jitsu specialist, her boxing I thought looked very good, and it's just that she
also got a debatable decision on that one too. I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know. I gave it to her. I have to look back. I think I might have been swayed because I bet on her that time, so that I was like, oh, that's the right decision. Yeah, but so she did use her striking to create some entries, but then she was missing the strength or any sort of wrestling to sort of make her effective in the clinch to take Marina down. Now, having said that, I think forget about the striking for now. So one end of the striking she does need to work on. I think she just needs to get used to getting hit. She needs to spar more. That's what I feel like. Yesterday there was so much hesitance, and I get it because Marina is one of the strongest, I think, hardest punchers. I think she wobbled and hurt Michelle Waterson several times in that great fight that I think Michelle Waterson looked one of the best performances that she's had, and she lost. That's just how good Marina Rodriguez is. But aside from that, to get used to getting hit on the way in, really focus on just the wrestling. Create that strength. Get into a wrestling camp only, I think, because all the other elements, the striking is all right. The jiu-jitsu is there. Wrestle. The Kevin Holland issue. Just learn how to wrestle. And offensive 100%. Wrestling too. No, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely talking about the Marina and Karate Hottie fight. Marina, she steps up to the plate because when we go back to that Karate Hottie versus Marina Rodriguez fight, that was a main event. They got put to the main event of the card, and this is another situation where Marina had to step up to the plate. Everyone's kind of, at least from America, rooting for Mackenzie Dern. She's kind of a fan favorite, and she just went ahead and survived on the ground with one of the best female grapplers in the world. So it's time that people start putting some respect on her name. I remember Angela Hill said in the post-fight show, she said, I'm kind of surprised that Marina Rodriguez is ranked below, or was ranked below Mackenzie Dern, because Marina has had to fight tougher opponents in the top 10. Whereas Mackenzie Dern, she hasn't had the strongest competition, but she has been getting those finishes by submission. So I think that's part of the reason why Mackenzie might have been ranked a little bit higher. There's always kind of a question on who exactly decides the rankings, but without a doubt, I think Marina Rodriguez has made it so people will start putting respect on her name. And now we have to wonder, what does this entail for the future? We already have the former champ Zhang Weili versus Rose Namajunas, the current champ, which is going to just be an absolute banger. It's going to be a trilogy between those two. So once we find out how that goes, I want to hear what your prediction for that fight is. We'll dive more into it, I'm sure, when the time comes, but just an early prediction, and then what the future should look like for Marina Rodriguez.
Oh man, I love myself some Rose. I mean, I came from a Taekwondo background back in the day, so I respect when, it's not always been the most effective, combat sport to learn in for MMA, but she makes it work, and working with Trevor Whitman has sort of turned her into a different kind of animal with that knockout power. Now, Zhang Weili, that last fight, she did get clipped, so you could say it's a flash knockout, right? If she manages to avoid that next time, who knows? Because that was a real 50-50 fight. That's why what makes the second fight so interesting. Yeah. So what you want? Early prediction? Early prediction? Oh my God.
It's so hard to say when you haven't seen them in the build up to it, but
yeah, it's hard to make. I mean, if I would say now, split decision win for anyone.
Okay, and then we would have to see who would fight the champ next, and I think a good title contention bout would be the one that everyone was tweeting about after the fight, Joanna versus Marina Rodriguez, striker versus striker. I think that would be a really tough and interesting matchup, and I think people underestimate how big Marina is for the division. She has some height. Mackenzie Dern was really struggling in closing the distance, because I remember seeing her at Ruka Gym. When I first met her, I was surprised at how little she was, because I'm 5'3", and she was definitely smaller than me and just much more petite. So she is definitely 100% a straw weight. But when you look at Marina Rodriguez, you can kind of see her body type fitting in the flyweight division as well. So matching up with Joanna, I think, is going to be the great next step. Did you have any other ideas for her matchup wise?
I mean, I see Yan Xiaonan is ranked above her still. That could be one. But I mean, I think she might be. She's definitely in contention. I mean, Joanna hasn't fought in a long time, and people have been debating about taking her out of the rankings at this point. But I mean, she is training, and she is the queen of. She's the what is it? She's the queen. That's what she's called. So that would be a great title eliminator. That would be fantastic. No, I like that suggestion.
And then everyone always just forgets about Carla Esparza, who probably should be fighting for the title next, because she's earned her right. But something about, I guess, UFC and wrestlers, they just kind of, forget that they're next.
But so I want to say something about Carla. I mean, last fight against Yan Xiaonan, she was vicious. She got the finish, the ground and pound with those elbows, the blades that she had, and she cut her open bad. If that's the Carla Esparza we have now, that'll be an exciting one to add into the UFC, because she's not just taking people down and keeping them there. She's starting to get these finishes, man. And I think she knew that she had to make that statement then, so to really be taken into consideration for that title fight. And I do think she's next for the title. She should get another title shot. I would like to see the revamped Carla fight any of Weili or Rose. 100%. But another thing, I did want to, if anything, and if they weren't in the same division, wouldn't Mackenzie and Carla be the best training partners, in the sense that Carla can teach Mackenzie everything she's missing,
and they're in the same area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So they could really work with each other. I do remember I interviewed Kay Hansen once, and she just said it's hard to train with someone that is in that same contention with you. I was like, oh, would Mackenzie Dern be a good partner? And she was just like, yeah, but I kind of want to fight her one day. So I don't know if you don't want that. Who was Kamaru training partners with for a while? Gilbert. Yeah. Gilbert, so they had to go their separate ways.
That's what's awkward. It's the camp, the gym you're at. The coaches are you're gonna create some tension there, because who are you gonna choose? You're gonna train me.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna train the other one. You're gonna train the new one who's Dern.
100%. There's only so much time in the day for
Yeah.
what the coaches can put their time aside for. So I'm sure we can talk about the strawweight division because it's so exciting for days and days and days. But this strawweight division, it was the first card where all the post-fight bonuses were awarded to only females. So it was a big day for the females in combat sports history. It's awesome to see the girls headline a card, and it did not disappoint. The classic striker versus grappler. Hopefully we can see Mackenzie make those adjustments in the wrestling and make waves in the top 5 again. But I think her ranking will be at least 6 after this. And then speaking of other females, not in MMA, but Miss Amanda Serrano, a 7-division boxing champion who has held 9 titles, signing with Jake's MVP promotion. So I know you wanted to give your analysis on that. I think that's an interesting route that she's taking.
Yeah, I'm surprised by some of the reactions I'm seeing. Like, I do see, a lot of her fans, of course, are supportive with everything she does. But there's a lot of people, and I see in the comments that are like, yeah, why would you do this? Like, this is such a joke. And like, really? Look, whatever you think of Jake Paul, and maybe, you think it's a joke, the way he's put himself out there and he's challenging, these MMA fighters to come to the boxing ring in his domain, But they know how to promote someone and put on a show. And if anything, he's already proven that he does care about the fighter pay thing now. If it comes from a genuine place, that's a different question. But that doesn't change the fact that for Amanda Serrano and all the female boxers that haven't been getting the backing that they need from the old school promoters that are usually headed by some old heads, back in like Bob Arams and like Eddie Hearn has been really good at that and bringing the women in. But Jake seems to really want to make a big change in the sense of putting women as headliners, and he wants to make that Katie Taylor fight, which would be arguably the biggest female boxing fight of all time. It stems from frustration. Like, if you look at to mix it with MMA a little bit, Clarissa Shields, who's now trying out MMA, she's already won her first fight. She's at PFL, correct?
Yes.
I think. Yeah. She said, like, yeah, I'm not getting paid enough. I'm not getting challenged anymore. I'm not getting the big fights I want. I need someone like that MVP Promotions that's promised to take on Amanda Serrano as their main, signing on the roster. So
yeah, you definitely don't know if she'll be
why. Like, there's
signed
no
to Jake
negative
now.
to it.
After she made those
It's
comments,
crazy.
I can beat Jake Paul. She has some hostility towards Jake Paul, making a mockery of the sport. But she even kind of mentioned Amanda Serrano, or she was asked about Amanda Serrano being on her card, and she just said, like, I would never disrespect myself like that. But honestly, when you're looking at what Jake Paul does in terms of eyes and bringing in a new crowd, I think that's completely on brand with what Amanda Serrano wants to do. She wants to be an inspiration for younger kids. Jake Paul has a really good connection with the TikTok generation and really connecting with the newer generation, trying to get them involved in boxing. So 100%, you got to do what you got to do to get your name out there before the Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul fight. Complete boxing casual over here. I didn't realize that Amanda Serrano was as big as she was in women's boxing because, I'm so invested in watching all that's going on in women's MMA. But now that her name's out there, I watched her interview with Brian Custer. She obviously has so many good things to say about Jake Paul. She did say, however, that he... not in these words, but Brian Custer asked her if Jake Paul really did give her X amount of money, and she said, I don't know about that. Maybe if he's given me the rest later. So there is a little bit of over-exaggeration on how much he's paying out the people he says he is, but I think to a certain extent he will be able to give them that money in the future by promoting them. But she did mention that it wasn't as much as he had said in certain headlines. So I think it's awesome that she's built this connection. They get to train in Puerto Rico, and Jake Paul being surrounded by some of the greatest boxers, he's obviously building the confidence to call out. What was that one tweet that he just did? I think Tyson Fury has just
Tyson Fury now has earned the right. Earned the right to challenge him.
He knows how to get people
He's trying to fight his
pissed off.
brother, so yeah, exactly. He's not gonna. Tyson isn't gonna, give any mind to it. He's trying to set up his brother with him now. But,
exactly.
Look, the last thing I'll say about this, I mean, how many times have people gone like into pro wrestling or WWE to promote their fights or whatever? Like real fighters have gone in there in that sort of gimmick. Now, Jake Paul has probably built up this profile and has all the eyeballs on him, and made so many waves and so many headlines in the boxing world that MVP Promotions is bound to at least get attention and be taken seriously, because the events they set up do make money and do draw all these eyeballs, and he has a huge female fan base too. That's why it makes sense. Get the women out there. So it could have been, this whole thing was just a promotion. His whole fight career might have been a promotion for this new company, this new line of business he's going into. I have no problems with that whatsoever. I mean, I think, dude, get her on there. I mean, Amanda Serrano, the world needs to see her. By the way, she has an MMA career as well. She's tried her hand at it too.
And has won through submissions, not even from knockouts.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know the level of competition, but I mean, and even in boxing, you see her skill level. It is really on par with like top level boxers all over the place. So, great,
100%,
great stuff. I support it.
Yeah, and she has done some grappling competitions. I have to catch up on all the no-gi world championships going on this past weekend. There's just so much happening in combat sports, but the most important topic of them all is the trilogy between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. When we look at these stats, the punches landed 150 for Fury, 72 for Wilder, jabs 36-9 for Wilder, and power punches 114 to 63 for Wilder. And then, of course, we got to see 5 knockdowns. So it was just a crazy fight, a gateway drug, as Brian Campbell says, for the boxing casuals. The heavyweight division is absolutely flourishing right now. And I know your favorite combat sport is boxing. So just tell me what your takeaways were from this crazy, crazy fight.
Well, what's funny is I started with boxing and really got into MMA many years ago as well. And then at some point MMA started taking over. That just that I watched it so much more. The bigger fights happened there and all that. But then an event like yesterday just really reminded me. I was texting this to everyone, like, man, the build up, the walkouts, the tension, the butterflies I get for an event like this. It's not really comparable anymore. Even for the huge MMA events that we've had over the years. So there was that. I mean, it is a gateway drug. It is the perfect ending as well to a trilogy of that magnitude.
Yes.
I mean, it's like you couldn't script the first, second, and third fight the way it went any better. If you wrote this in a Hollywood script, they would write it off as like, hey, this is too unrealistic. Let's not, You had the first fight, Wilder getting completely outboxed, loses all the rounds except for one maybe, but gets 2 knockdowns, gets the knockout basically in the 12th round, and then, everyone knows Tyson Fury rises up like The Undertaker. Great. They give it a draw. Was it a robbery? It was a robbery, but let's just, it is what it is. Second fight. Fury learned from the last round after he got knocked down that badly and went back to win the rest of the round. He then figured out the key for the second fight. He's like, only then I started pushing the pace and really putting it on Wilder, and I saw that he was backing up and couldn't throw anymore and didn't like that, so that's what I'm going to do the whole next fight. And that's exactly what you got, a one-sided domination. Towel got thrown in, 20,000 excuses made. Let's get that trilogy. After, by the way, Deontay Wilder robs Tyson Fury of about 100 million pounds, I think it was, with the big AJ fight by, calling for that third rematch, the trilogy, last minute after that fight was already announced. So they come in with bad intentions, and there's only one definitive truth in combat sports, which is a flat-out knockout. And that's what you get here to end the trilogy. Finally, the knockout, not without adversity, not without Fury himself being knocked down twice as well.
It was absolutely a back and forth rally, which I think is what we were hoping for. Because if it was like the second and Deonte was just getting punished, I don't think it would be nearly as exciting. But we got 5 knockdowns, 3 of them Deontay Wilder, and then 2 of them for Tyson Fury. So I guess Tyson Fury falling down twice. But when you think about in the lead up to it, a big narrative coming in was that Deontay Wilder was going to be heavier coming into this one. So we had a little bit of muscle gain for him heading into this. Did you think it was going to have that much of an impact, and did you see it in his power against Tyson Fury?
Just as soon as I saw that, I mean, last fight, he also came in the heaviest he ever was, and now he came in even heavier. And last time, it already affected his cardio. Now, of course, maybe I don't know if he actually believes this, but he had all the excuses of my water was poisoned, my walking suit was way too big, too heavy.
He does have some nice
Tyson
walkout
Fury
suits,
implemented this. They're cool.
They're
cool.
cool.
But oh, by the way, nothing beats the Tyson Fury walkout. No, that was the best walkout I've ever seen. Probably.
Very cool. Very
the whole
fun.
speech in the
I
beginning.
mean,
But-
it's so boxing.
Yeah, they should. I want to do it. If they implement that in MMA as well, it could definitely create a lot more excitement too. But going back to the weight. Tyson Fury's game plan last time, you saw a lot of it was like I'm hitting him with a combination and I'm gonna I'm gonna lean on him. I'm gonna wrestle with him a little bit to tire him out. This is like Wilder is never used to fighting anyone who's taller than him. Tyson Fury was taller than Wilder. It's easier for him to do that, to do the lean and everything, and it zaps his energy, especially for someone we see that he's so upper body heavy. And his legs are definitely not even middleweight legs, I think.
Yeah.
So it's a smart game plan. And so I was really surprised to see. So on the one hand, I was surprised to see him getting even heavier, especially with the cardio issues he had last time, and you saw that during this fight. But on the other hand, I think his only real proper game plan and way to win and change things this time around was, okay, I'm gonna get an early knockout, rounds 1 to 5 or bust. So I know my cardio will hold on at least till the 5th round. So let's just put this weight on, create more power, more pop in my shots, and maybe even be able to deal with the wrestling a little bit more. And if I can't get the knockout by then whatever, I'll go out on my shield, which is another thing I thought. After the last fight, he was Wilder, that is, was complaining about the towel being thrown in by his now former coach Mark Breland, who he fired.
And so I did want to touch on that point. What did you think was the biggest difference between Mark Breland being in his corner and his new coach Malik Scott? How did you think that affected Deonte's performance? Because I would think it's fair to say that Deonte did level up for this fight. So what aspects do you think Malik Scott was able to add to his game?
I think more than anything, they did work a lot on the body. Like all the training footage that I was seeing was focused on body shots and like throwing them with vicious intent without much technique anyway. But that's the only way you can really bother Tyson and keep him at a range, because to throw that big right hand that he uses to knock these people out, sometimes even hitting them just in the forehead, you do need to create that space that Tyson wasn't giving him at all times. But, from the beginning, as soon as the round started and he won the first round, I was like, I'm surprised he even won a round this time. He was instantly, from the first bell, boom, hitting those big jabs to the body at all times. And you saw that, Tyson, it took him a little bit to get the timing right. It didn't take him long, but it did back him up so much to the point that, okay, if he follows that up with a big right, he could land it. And he only needs to land once. So that's something. But I think the biggest part of that, the training, Malik Scott and him are really like family. Like, he did beat him and knock him out too back in the day, but they're like family. And I think it's the mental aspect of having someone you trust there that really made Wilder listen more. Maybe people were thinking maybe this is another yes man in the camp and stuff, but when I see these post-fight interviews and the way like Wilder was behaving around him, I think for the first time he was actually giving his training to the coaches. It's crazy to say this is the first time. With Mark Breland, after all the accusations were made, he came out and exposed all these things about the training camps before with Wilder, where he said like he never goes on runs, which by the way I doubt he did this time as well. But he dictates his own pace. They want to do pad work. He doesn't want to do pad work. He wants to just hit the bag. Or he didn't want to hit the bag. He just wanted to do pads. He would dictate everything, and he wouldn't follow his coaches. He's like, I know what I need to do because I know I just need to land this right hand. Well, once you find someone who doesn't get killed off that right hand, that's when you're in trouble. So I think more than anything, it was that whole camaraderie, that whole mental aspect, and having someone who's not a yes man in there, who, by the way, has a really extensive professional record.
100%. And one of your comments about how they fought before and Deontay Wilder actually had knocked him out. I remember BC mentioned that there was like even questions about, did he really hit him that hard? Did he take a drop or was he just trying to get his friend paid because they were good friends even back then? So I think the pairing of Malik Scott and Deontay Wilder at this point of his career is, when you're Deontay Wilder and you've been through all these fights, you do want to have a little bit more of a say on how you coach yourself. So I think when you're working with someone like Coach Breland, maybe he wanted more of a dictatorial type of coaching style, and that just the clash of heads wasn't working. And also it could just lead on to another excuse of Deontay Wilder. Like, he wanted to have someone to blame in that scenario for the second fight, and it just all happened to fall back on Coach Breland, who I have so much respect for because he's done so much for the sport. So when you look more into all the excuses and stuff, you kind of have to question which ones are legitimate with Wilder. But at the end of the day, let's hope that he can take this loss and maybe come back as a little soft-hearted, like Tyson said. I think Fury tried to not congratulate him, but have a nice, respectful ending. And Tyson or Deonte didn't want any part of that, so he says, "I'm going to pray for him, and I'm going to hope that he can be better." And so hopefully we can see a good sportsman-like reaction from Deonte in the post-fight interviews to come.
Well, the thing that some people forget is that Tyson and Wilder were friends in the beginning. I mean, when Tyson went on the spiral and had the depression and the cocaine addiction and all that, it was Wilder that was sort of motivating him in a very competitive way, maybe to come back and like, hey man. And at some point they agreed, like, hey man, I promise, like, if you come back, I'll promise I'll give you this title shot. And that's how it started. They were like, without Wilder, you wouldn't have the Fury you have now. Without Fury, you wouldn't have the Wilder that we had yesterday, because that Wilder was actually the best Wilder we've ever seen, surprisingly. The guy has never been technical, but the game plan, he showed the jab, that he feinted. For the first time, he was feinting several times. Like, he did, I think he caught Fury off guard with a feint first, and then landed that right again to the forehead with Tyson going into it. So showed his power. So, but they made each other in a way, and they both disagree, but really they did.
100%. I feel like they are synonymous with each other, and I'm happy that Fury is probably going to go on and fight different people. But where will Deontay Wilder go after this? He is 34, I believe,
35,
or 30,
even,
going on 35, and he, he has hinted at the idea of retirement, but he does say that he still wants to do more with his career. But what is the best next move for Deontay Wilder?
I'd say this. I mean, like in the beginning, when I was predicting the fight of yesterday, I was like, well, after the second fight, I said, I think it's over for him if he doesn't take this rematch, because the thing that people wanted was his belt. That was the only real reason to challenge him. Now, without a belt, he's way too much of a threat. That right hand is knocked out like 40. He had 44 fights by now. Let's say, I think before Fury it was like 42 fights with 41 knockouts. He is way too much of a threat to fight without a belt. So that's what's tough about this situation. And I still think, though, the way he showed himself, and his stock definitely rose last night with the way he showed himself, that it could still pull numbers like a Fury, an Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder fight would still pull numbers. Like, that's one I would like to see if AJ doesn't manage to get his belt back from Usyk next. And then you get Usyk, Fury fighting each other to unify the belts, and then the winner of Wilder and AJ can take a crack at it again before, I think, Tyson retires.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be a lot more interest after this fight. Like I said, I'm a complete boxing casual, and this is one of the first ones that I watched live. And then we're also going to have Showtime with Canelo and Caleb Plant coming up. Obviously not in the heavyweight division, but there's different things going on in the boxing world that I think a lot of people in the MMA niche will be interested in looking towards. So I'm super excited. This was an awesome breakdown. I remember you texted me this one picture about, you may not like it, but this body
Yeah.
represents peak male athletic performance, and there isn't a goddamn thing you can do about it. And I think that just speaks volumes, because Tyson Fury is the best heavyweight boxer in the world, and he doesn't come in with this shredded look like Deontay Wilder does. So I thought that was a funny point in all the analysis that we were looking at. But do you have any final statements for this Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder trilogy?
I mean, this is one of those nights, and this is one of those events that like makes me fall back in love with, sometimes, you're in this routine, and I've recently gotten into this line of business a little bit in this industry, and this is one of those that, relights that spark that you fall in love with what you're doing, and you're like, I love this sport so much. Just all of combat sports, It's like, when you've been with someone for a long time in a relationship. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, boxing was dying apparently, but sometimes you're in a relationship for a bit too long and start losing that spark, and then like you do that one little thing, you go on this one little trip, and you rediscover each other. It's start talking again, fall back in love, like that's what it was like. This was one of those events. I'm like, oh man, now my meter is back up here. Like, okay, my interest, goes like this, and now it's way here. It's up here, and I'm excited for Canelo, you know.